House band Guitarist would not let B.B. King on stage, said the blues were for professionals, not tourists. What happened in the next 4 minutes became the most legendary blues club moment in Chicago history. What happened that night proved that the quietest person in the room is often the most dangerous, and that assumptions about people based on how they look can produce the most humiliating lessons a person will ever receive. This is the story of how the king of the blues reminded an entire room what mastery actually looks like. It was a Saturday night, October 14, 1989, at the Blue Note Lounge on the south side of Chicago, Illinois. B.B. King was 64 years old. He had a night off between tour dates and had done what he had done for decades when he found himself in a city with good music. He went looking for a blues club. He was wearing a simple dark wool overcoat, a plain navy button-down shirt, and a pair of worn brown leather shoes. No jewelry, no entourage, no instrument case. To anyone glancing at him in the dim light of the club, he looked like a retired schoolteacher who had wandered in for a drink. What no one in the room knew was that the man settling onto a barstool near the back wall had 15 Grammy Awards, a Rock and Roll Hall of Fame induction, and had played for more audiences in more countries than any blues musician in history. The house band was midway through their second set when B.B. arrived. The lead guitarist was a 29-year-old named Marcus Webb. He had sharp cheekbones, a neatly trimmed goatee, and the easy confidence of someone who had won every local blues competition worth entering. He was playing a custom Fender Stratocaster that had cost him $4,500, and he wore a black leather vest, silver rings on 4 fingers, and custom snakeskin boots that caught the stage lights with every step. Marcus was genuinely talented. His bends were precise, his phrasing was sophisticated, and he commanded the 150-capacity room with the authority of someone who believed this stage belonged to him. And in a sense it did. He had been the house band leader for 3 years, had built the Tuesday and Saturday night blues jams into the most popular live music events on the South Side, and had turned away dozens of amateurs who wanted to sit in and embarrass themselves. Marcus looked out at his crowd the way a king surveys his territory. His blind spot was simple. He had never left Chicago. He had no frame of reference for what mastery sounded like beyond his own reflection. Between sets, B.B. approached the edge of the stage. He waited until Marcus finished adjusting a tuning peg and spoke quietly. "I was wondering if I might sit in for a song during the open jam." Marcus looked up. He saw an older man in a plain overcoat with no instrument, no case, no flash. He saw someone who looked like he had wandered in from a church social. Marcus smiled the way people smile when they are about to say no politely but not gently. "I appreciate the interest, my man, but this stage is not really an open mic situation," Marcus said. "We run a professional jam here. The guys I let sit in are working musicians I already know. I have to protect the quality of the show. These people paid a $10 cover and they expect a certain level." "I understand," B.B. said. Marcus continued, leaning against his amplifier. "Look, no offense, but I get 5 or 6 guys a night who want to come up here and noodle around. Most of them can barely hold a pick. This equipment is expensive, the band has a reputation, and I cannot have someone up here who does not know what they are doing. It throws off the whole set." "That is fair," B.B. said. "Tell you what," Marcus said with what he clearly believed was generosity. "Grab a seat right up front. Watch the next set. You might learn something about how the blues is supposed to sound when it is played by professionals. We are doing a Freddie King tribute tonight. Real players only." B.B. King, the man who had taught Freddie King half of what Freddie King knew, the man whose single-note vibrato had been studied and copied by every blues guitarist alive, the man whose playing had made grown men weep in concert halls on 6 continents, nodded mildly and said, "I appreciate the offer. I will just listen then." He returned to his barstool and ordered a glass of water. He did not correct Marcus. He did not mention his name. He did not reach into his coat for the laminated tour credential hanging from his inside pocket. He just sat there, listening to the band with genuine interest, tapping his foot quietly on the brass rail of the bar. During the break between the second and third sets, the bartender, a 54-year-old woman named Dorothy who had been pouring drinks at the Blue Note for 19 years, walked over to the bassist and grabbed his elbow. She was not smiling. "Do you know who your guitar player just told to sit down and learn?" she said, her voice barely above a whisper. The bassist shook his head. "That man at the end of the bar, in the wool coat, that is B.B. King." The bassist looked at her. Then he looked at the bar stool. Then his face went the color of old chalk. He crossed the stage in 3 steps and whispered into Marcus's ear during the set break. Marcus laughed and shook his head. "No way. That is not B.B. King. B.B. King does not just walk into clubs on the South Side with no security and no guitar." Dorothy came around the bar. She was holding a worn Epiphone Sheraton that lived behind the counter for emergencies when a string broke or an amp died. She set it on the edge of the stage with the quiet authority of someone who had seen enough nonsense for one evening. "That man has played this club 4 times, she said evenly. "I served him whiskey sours in 1971 and water in 1983 and water again tonight. I know who he is. Give him the guitar or I will." Marcus's confidence flickered for the first time all evening. He looked at the older man on the bar stool who was sitting patiently with his hands folded, watching the room with the mild, unhurried expression of someone who had absolutely nothing to prove to anyone. Marcus walked to the edge of the stage. His voice had lost its earlier authority. "Well," he said, "I suppose we could make an exception. You can do 1 song, if you want." B.B. King smiled warmly. "That is very kind of you." B.B. took off his wool overcoat, folded it neatly over the back of a chair, and walked to the stage. He picked up the Epiphone. It was a $200 guitar with a scratch across the body and a missing volume knob. He turned it over in his hands, adjusted the strap, and tested the tuning. It was slightly flat. He corrected it by ear in about 4 seconds. He looked at the band. "The thrill is gone. B flat minor. Follow me." The drummer counted in. B.B. played the opening notes. The first thing that hit the room was the vibrato. That vibrato, the one that could not be copied, could not be taught, could not be faked. The note did not just sustain. It breathed. It trembled. It sounded like a human voice crying out in the dark. One note and the air in the room changed. A couple at a table near the stage stopped talking mid-sentence. The woman put her hand on her husband's arm and squeezed. Dorothy set down the glass she was polishing and did not pick it up again. A man standing near the pool table in the back said, half to himself and half to no one, "That is B.B. King. That is B.B. King on that stage right now." A woman at the end of the bar turned and said, "That cannot be him. Not here." Then B.B. hit the bend in the second verse. The signature bend. The one where the note climbed and held and quivered at the top like it was deciding whether to break or hold on. The bend that only one pair of hands on earth had ever made sound exactly like that. The bend that had been recorded, studied, slowed down, analyzed, and attempted by tens of thousands of guitarists across 4 decades. No one had ever replicated it. No one ever would. All remaining doubt evaporated. People stood from their chairs. A man in a work jacket who had been nursing a beer for an hour began crying openly and did not wipe his face. Someone near the door shouted his name so loudly that 2 people passing on the sidewalk outside opened the door to see what was happening. Within 90 seconds, a dozen people from the restaurant next door had crowded into the entrance of the Blue Note, standing on their toes to see over the heads of the crowd. B.B. played for 4 minutes. He played the way he always played. Not to impress, not to show off, not to punish Marcus or prove a point. He played the way a man speaks when he has been speaking the same language for 40 years and every word comes out exactly where it belongs. The Epiphone, which had spent its life as a backup guitar collecting dust behind a bar, sang like it had been waiting its whole existence for these hands. Marcus Webb stood 6 feet from B.B. King with his $4,500 custom Stratocaster hanging around his neck and his silver rings catching the stage light. The confidence had drained from his face entirely. His mouth was slightly open. His arms hung at his sides. His hands, which had felt so sure on the fretboard 10 minutes ago, were trembling. He looked like a man who had just discovered that the ocean he thought he had conquered was actually a swimming pool. BB hit the final note. He let it ring. The sustain lasted 6 seconds. The room held its breath with it. When the note finally faded, the silence lasted exactly 1 heartbeat before the Blue Note Lounge exploded in the loudest, most sustained applause the club had heard in its 27-year history. BB carefully removed the strap and held the Epiphone out to Dorothy with both hands, as if returning something precious. "Beautiful instrument," he said. "Warm tone. Excellent sustain for its price range. She is a good guitar." He turned to Marcus. Marcus had not moved. His face had progressed through white to red to a deep flush that reached his ears. "I told B.B. King to sit down and watch professionals play," Marcus said. His voice was hollow. "I told the king of the blues that my stage was for real musicians. I offered to let B.B. King learn something about how the blues is supposed to sound." The crowd was absolutely still. Everyone was watching. BB stepped toward Marcus and did something no one expected. He extended his hand. Marcus took it. "You were protecting your stage," BB said gently. "That is what a good band leader does. You did not know who I was. You were looking out for your band, your audience, and the quality of your show. That is not arrogance. That is responsibility." "But I was so disrespectful," Marcus said. "The way I talked to you, telling you to sit down and learn, to you." BB shook his head. "You were not disrespectful to me. You were disrespectful to an old man in a plain coat who you did not recognize. And that is the part worth thinking about. Not because it was me, because it could have been anyone. The next person who walks in here looking like nobody special might be nobody special, or they might be the most important musician you will ever meet. You will not know until you give them the courtesy of finding out." He paused. "I've been playing the blues for 40 years, BB continued. And if those 40 years taught me one thing, it is this. The blues does not care what you look like. It does not care how old you are. It does not care how much your guitar cost or how many rings you wear or whether people know your name when you walk through the door. The blues only asks one question." He tapped his chest with one finger. "Did you live it? If you lived it, you have earned every stage in the world. And no one has the right to tell you otherwise." Marcus nodded slowly. He was blinking hard. "Mr. King, I need you to know. You are the reason I picked up a guitar. Every lick I play, every bend, every vibrato. I learned it from your records. I have been copying you my whole life. And tonight I did not even recognize you." BB smiled and put his hand on Marcus's shoulder. "Then I have one more thing to teach you tonight," he said quietly. "Stop copying me. You have good hands and real instincts. I heard your tone during that second set. You have something in there that is yours. Find it. Play that. The world does not need another B.B. King. The world needs the first Marcus Webb." Marcus could not speak for several seconds. When he finally did, he said simply, "Yes, sir." BB stayed for the third set. He sat in the front row, exactly where Marcus had told him to sit. He listened to every song. He nodded along. He tapped his foot. After the final number, he stood and applauded with the rest of the crowd. Then he put on his wool overcoat, shook Dorothy's hand, thanked Marcus for letting him sit in, and walked out into the October Chicago night without fanfare. Years later, Marcus Webb became one of the most respected blues educators in the Chicago public school system. He taught guitar to over 3,000 students across 2 decades. The first lesson he delivered to every new class was always the same story. He would sit on the edge of his desk and say, "Let me tell you about the night I told B.B. King he was not good enough to play on my stage. And then let me tell you what he taught me about respect, humility, and what it actually means to be a professional." He kept one of his silver rings in a glass case on that desk. He never wore rings again after that night. The Blue Note Lounge closed in 2003, but before it did, Dorothy mounted a small brass plaque on the wall beside the stage. It read, On this spot in October 1989, B.B. King was told the stage was for professionals. He sat down, he listened, then he proved it. When B.B. King died on May 14, 2015, Marcus Webb drove 5 hours from Chicago to the memorial in Memphis. He stood in line for 3 hours. When he reached the casket, he placed a single guitar pick on the velvet lining. It was the pick Dorothy had left inside the Epiphone that night. Marcus had carried it in his wallet for 26 years. If this incredible story of mistaken assumptions and quiet dignity moved you, make sure to subscribe and hit that thumbs up button. Share this video with anyone who has ever been underestimated, dismissed, or told they did not belong somewhere before they even had a chance to show what they could do. Have you ever been judged by your appearance and gotten the chance to prove someone wrong? Or have you ever been the one who misjudged someone and learned a lesson you never forgot? Let us know in the comments. And do not forget to ring that notification bell for more stories about the moments that proved what true greatness and real class look like.